You're listening to episode 78 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, we're chatting with Cena Martin Chandler about common mistakes women make when creating systems in both their business and their life. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld, your host as always, and we have a little bit of a different episode for you today. However, it's a bit of a preview of what's to come on this podcast in the future because as you guys know, the bulk of this podcast focuses on things like health. And if we are doing mindset, it's usually about personal health habits and that kind of thing. And I personally just love learning about entrepreneurship and building a business and being more productive in life and all of that. And so the topics that we're going to start covering are going to be intermingled with more of the conversation around how to be an effective entrepreneur. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up where this podcast is going, because as much as I love talking about health and love bringing on guests, especially my business coaching clients, to talk about their health expertise, I do also really love learning about productivity, business development, entrepreneurship, all the mindset stuff that goes into entrepreneurship, and really anything around being able to be more productive in pursuing our purpose. So hopefully you guys are into that because we definitely are going to have more content on that in the future. But today's episode is a really great conversation around hiring. And hiring help is something that has made a huge impact in my life and my business and just has allowed me to be more productive and happier on a day-to-day basis. And it's something that took a big mindset shift for me to be able to do effectively. So I love the conversation we have today with the particular guest that we have on. She has a great perspective, a really interesting perspective on hiring. And so I think you guys are really going to love learning from her. So today's guest is Cena Martin Chandler of Catch Your Confidence Consulting. With over 18 years of experience in building teams for companies and delegation, Cena has developed a method called the Pillow Payments Method that teaches online service providers a no-fear way of hiring remote teams. This approach directly counteracts the current industry training around hiring and building remote teams. Cena's approach is to take the CEO or operations manager through what she calls a mindset makeover, which implements psychology-focused belief building and validation to prepare them for managing team members. This approach maximizes managers and the CEO's ability to lead efficiently, and it's a breath of fresh air to the typical old-school training of being a good leader and commanding authority when leading other people. Cena believes this method will continue to produce empathetic, inclusive, and effective leaders as we move into 2021 and beyond. So Cena's got a lot of really great stuff to share about hiring and how to do it in a way that might be a little bit different than what you've been taught before. Or if you haven't been taught, it's probably going to be something that you've never really thought about before. I know I learned a bunch from her in this conversation, so I'm really glad that we got to have her on. And so without further ado, here is Cena Martin Chandler. All right, everybody. Well, I am so excited to have with us on the show today, Cena Martin Chandler. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast, Cena.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I would love to hear from you because this is a little bit of like a new type of job or a new type of coaching that I've never really heard of before. And I know our audience would love to get to know you better too. So if you could just tell us your story and especially how you became an operations coach.
Yes, absolutely. So my story basically started out in high school, my senior year. I thought I was going to be a paralegal. I had a fierce desire to go into law. However, after the stars aligned, it didn't work out that way. So I actually ended up becoming a mom right after my senior year of high school. And when I had my son, I realized I needed to get a job, finish college, things like that. So I went down the road everybody goes down, tried to, go to school, get the dream job, but it didn't feel like a fit. My heart kept pulling me towards entrepreneurship. And I tried so many different careers. None of them really worked out for me too well. And so what happened was when my son turned 3 or 4, I started an at-home business. And this was before it was popular. Nobody really knew what it was. And so I got online and basically tried to start a few different kind of companies that fell through. And I basically hit burnout trying to build a business on my own. I did have some success in it. My 3rd or 4th year in business, I ended up hitting 6 figures. And although that was something that no one in my family had done before, I was burnt out. And what really made me get into the coaching that I'm in now is my son came up to me one day and he said, "Mom, I never see you. I never get to spend time with you. You're always working. You're always behind the computer. And I feel like I don't really have you the way I should." And that stopped me dead in my tracks. That really made me say, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to build this business, I have to do it in a way where it's sustainable and where my family still has me. You know what I mean? And that is what really I took a deep dive and started figuring out, how do I build a team? How do I hire people who can help me build this company? What is operations? How do I make workflows and systems work so that I'm not spending all of my time juggling all of the pieces? So that's how I got here. And once I took a deep dive into this world, basically, and figured out how to make it work, my other clients started hiring me to help them do the same thing.
That's so interesting. I feel like usually when you're the one that's learning all the growth and operation stuff, like it's because that's what you want to do in your business. Ironically, literally right before we got on this call, I was working on my organizational chart with my assistant, just kind of like going through the different roles and really trying to figure out who our next hire is going to be. So actually, this is perfect timing for me to have this conversation with you. So as an operations coach, did you do some kind of training to do that? Or did you really just learn from your own experience of learning how to grow a business effectively?
It was a combination of both. I went back to college, actually. So I went back to school to get certification in like human resources, competency. And I went back to learn about organizational builds, how the big companies, right, how they actually build out their organizations. So I did do training for that for about 1.5 years to get that. And then I always tell people I really learned from hard knocks. So I learned from doing it, right? And that is what really helped me to understand what works and what doesn't. And I think one of the biggest things I took away from doing the work in real time is that I realized every single business is unique. You cannot copy and paste the way somebody else built their team or the way someone else hired into your business, because every company needs something different. And so that's really what I pulled away from formal training as well as learning through doing.
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, I'm not sure who becomes a successful entrepreneur just by going to school. I really think a lot of what we learn really does come from making mistakes and doing things maybe, I don't want to say the wrong way, because honestly, and maybe you can tell me if you agree with this, I feel like there is a period of time that you kind of do have to go through the process yourself as a solopreneur and get your business off the ground. It's hard to hire a team when you're first starting your business unless you have a lot of capital to put into it. But I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are starting their own businesses that hit that place where they do need help if they don't want to get to that burnout place. And so Sometimes some of us take a little longer than other people to get there, but I do think that hiring people for me has always been such an important part of allowing my business to keep functioning after, I think we're in like year 8 now, and not, basically driving my own mental and physical well-being into the ground. Which it sounds like you had your kid, you said your son was telling you that you needed to stop. Nobody's telling me necessarily, but I feel like I'm kind of at that place where I'm like, yeah, this level of work is not going to be something I want to continue. So let's talk a little bit about hiring, because you said that we can't just copy and paste what other people are doing in their businesses and expect it to work for ours. So when it comes to, and let's just talk to the people that have not hired anybody yet and are like thinking that this is, their next step and they want to hire help for their business. Where should they start? Or like what are some of the mistakes people make when they're starting with their first hire?
Yes, the mistake that most people make is bringing somebody in immediately to take over social media. That's the biggest one.
Oh, interesting.
That's the biggest one, because not everybody, but a ton of different business coaches and things, you'll hear that just online, right? Hire somebody to take over your social media. That's the first step. But however, I say that's a mistake, because the way you really get to see where your time is being sucked, right? Like what's the black hole that's absorbing all of your time? Well, the way you figure that out is track your time for a week. And, there's apps that can help you do that. There's different things that can watch your desktop basically while you work to show you where the majority of your time is going. And once you see that, for me, for example, my time wasn't really going to my social media. My time was going to creating trainings and documents for my clients. I found out after tracking my time, 70% of my week went to creating those assets. And so once you find out where your time is going, then you can say, wow, if I can hire someone to take over this thing, that will free up 70% of my week. And now I can go work on other things that are going to grow the business. So that's why I say don't jump to hire someone to take over your social media. Number one, it can get quite expensive to hire a social media manager. It's extremely expensive to hire a copywriter. And if that's not the place where your time is really going, your money is not going to see a return there as quickly as it would if you go and hire for what you need.
Yeah. Well, and with the social media thing, I feel like for it to be done well, there's a lot of training that goes into that, and to make sure that they're actually getting your voice and your aesthetic and all of that. And I'm looking at my org chart right now, that's actually an area that we don't have anybody doing right now, really. And so, but that's okay, because one, I'm not like a massive social media user anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. I know at some point we'll want to have someone there to just help with the growth element of the business, but it's not something that's taking a ton of my time. And for me, really, I think the big first hire that I made, because again, it's really funny that this was the conversation we were having 20 minutes ago. The big hire we made first was somebody to help with the fulfillment piece. So actually really the customer service element. And for me, and I don't know if you agree with this, but for me, I really prioritize customer experience above all else, because I know that that is actually what's going to massively affect my marketing, my sales, like how confident I am in my services and that kind of thing. So for me, it was really helpful to have somebody come in and kind of pick up some of the pieces of things that started to get difficult to do when my client load just got so big that I couldn't do it on my own anymore. And so that, I know for me, made a really big difference in my business. And it just took a little bit of like stress off my plate. Because in my mind, and I don't want to talk too much, I want to hear your expertise, and you can tell me if you agree with this. In my mind, I would much rather have consistent, good customer experience and drop the ball a little bit on marketing and Instagram and that kind of thing than the other way around. Like honestly, I go weeks sometimes without having any content like really put out on social media. And so and listen, I'm not saying that's a strategy. It's just, if I'm going to drop the ball somewhere, I'd rather drop it on the marketing than the customer experience. Because if you mess up customer experience, like you're in a lot of trouble with your business. Do you agree with that, or do you have a different perspective?
100%. We are very much alike. That's also a focus for me and my team. Customer experience is top of the line, because that, like you said, that impacts everything. And so if you're putting so much effort into your marketing and making sure your Instagram captions are right and all of that, but you're dropping the ball on serving the people who actually hired you, like you said, you're going to be in a world of trouble. So I agree with you 100%.
And to be fair, obviously, there might be some other things that could use support. And I agree with Cena that you should kind of look at your schedule of what you're doing and what's taking a lot of your time. But I think it sounds like for you too, really serving your customers was what was taking the most time, which, I mean, in theory, maybe it should also be like, the most time consuming part of your job is actually helping people. But I'm glad you mentioned that because, again, we're not poo-pooing hiring somebody to help with social media. It's just, you don't want to do that at the expense of not really having any help with serving your clients.
The other thing is, like you mentioned before, when you're in the beginning, I know finances is a big concern in regards to hiring. And so you definitely want to make sure you bring someone in who's going to help you with that bottom line piece. And so, like you said, focusing on the customer experience and bringing someone in or hiring someone who can help you make sure that that revenue part of your business continues to grow, that's the smartest option to make. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it's really important.
Well, and I think with customer service, you can hire somebody that doesn't have any specific experience in that type of business. Like the person I've hired has experience working front desk at a hotel and at a cafe. So she has like quote unquote customer service experience. She knows how to treat a customer, but I pretty much trained her everything about the way my business operates. And so I was able to hire somebody at a much lower rate than if you were to hire somebody that's like somebody who comes in as like a manager role. That is going to be much higher of an investment for you than starting someone who's just an assistant that just can take some of the smaller tasks off your plate that you can actually train them yourself.
Right. Absolutely. It's really smart. Like you said, like the person I hired for my customer service, she used to work in the cell phone type of like technology industry. So she was very unfamiliar with coaching or anything like that. But just as you mentioned, it's a much lower rate than if you would go hire a business manager or if you would go hire somebody to take those higher levels. You can very much so get someone who's from another industry, teach her on your own processes and how you sell. And it's a win-win for everybody. So that's a really good point.
Awesome. So when somebody is going to be hiring someone, I know a big question that comes up is how do you figure out like how much time you should be hiring someone for? Because I know if you put together a job proposal or I guess a job application posting, people want to know like what's the time commitment going to be? So what would be a good way to figure that out?
I think it's fluid for each person that comes in. I mean, you don't have to start out with somebody for 40 hours a week if that's not what you need. I'd say start with your budget because you may want to have somebody come in for 20, 30 hours, but you may only really be able to right now pay for someone to work for you for 15 hours. You know what I mean? Maybe she does 10 or 15 hours a week. So really start with like where you are and what do you need? And just think every single hour that person is working, it's saving you time that you would have to take to do that specific task. So that's a good way to look at it without beating yourself up. And one other thing I want to say, depending on if you're using like an agent, because there's different ways you can hire. So you can use an agency or you could go to somebody who's a direct freelancer or something like that. Do not let different agencies pressure you into having to hire someone for 40 hours a week, because I've seen that before as well, where they're saying, we're willing to do a contract with you for this person, but you have to hire them for 40 hours a week. Don't feel pressure to do that. Do what's right for your business.
Yeah, because we started with an agency at my company and their minimum was 40 hours a month, which I feel like 40 hours a month where I was in my business was totally doable. But I know there's some people out there that even 40 hours a month would be too much.
Yeah.
And so when I hired my current assistant, we told her that we'd probably be starting around 10 or 15 hours a week, just knowing what the demand was from my previous assistant from the agency. And I did mention to her, there's the potential that this could turn into, 20, 30, and maybe even 40 hours a week, like a full-time job at some point. So obviously not everybody's going to need a full-time assistant, and maybe they don't even want a full-time assistant, but I think it's helpful for when you're hiring the person to have that open-mindedness to say, yeah, I could become full-time potentially.
Absolutely. And people love the opportunity to be able to grow. So that's a really good point to add that in, because the person knows that, you care about their evolvement as well and their career growth as well. So it's really important to mention that when you are in the process of hiring.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I can imagine it would be a little bit stressful if you felt like you had to have even 20 hours a week of work for somebody to do. Because, if you think about how much time it can go into training someone, like I feel like I've been passing stuff off as quickly as possible, but there's limitations to how fast I can give things over. I wouldn't have 20 plus hours a week for her to do when we first started. So that would have been like stressful for me to be like, I have to fill these hours. And then you're paying for something that's not really actually helping you. And then, it ends up harming the experience for both people because they feel like they're wasting their time. And then you feel like you're wasting your money.
Which is a terrible position to be in. You don't want to be there. So, if you get there, you can, I don't want to call it terrible because if you're there, you can bounce back, but I agree with you. Don't add extra pressure or stress on yourself. And that's the reason I'm saying start out with what feels good for your business. You don't have to, you don't have to be obligated to give someone more hours than they can do or that you can afford or that you have need for in your business right now. So just do what feels right.
Mm-hmm. So is there a way that somebody can know that they're ready for hiring help?
Okay, so I like to look at this from this point of view. So if you are at a place where one, client work is becoming overwhelming, like you feel like when you close the laptop, it's never done. So that's the first spot. If the client work just becomes more than what you can handle. The second thing is, like you mentioned earlier, if you feel like certain balls are being dropped, whether it's in the client experience or within your marketing, that there's something in your business you really need to be doing, but you're not doing it right now. And if you're in either one of those positions, you definitely need to hire. One more thing, if you feel as though, or that you have a process for the way that you do something. So whether it's your marketing or how you deliver the products, right, that clients buy from you once they purchase, if you have a certain process for something down to the point where you can teach it to somebody else, those 3 areas are really good times to hire.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I feel like that's something that for me, as I've grown, even just because my business changed in 2020 and it kind of like, I'm trying to think how to explain this. Like I had a little bit of a lull of like, oh yeah, this is easy. And this is like, I don't have that many clients and I can handle this. And then as we've been growing really fast in the last 6 to 12 months. I just realized like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that have to get done that my brain is going to like melt if I have to remember all this stuff. So even things like sending reminders to groups about when calls are and making sure individual clients are booking sessions, like that was stuff I used to do myself because I could kind of like remember all the people I'm working with individually and just like kind of have this little, list in my head of, oh, I haven't heard from them in a while. I should probably check in. And you get to a certain place where if you have enough clients and you have enough people that you're serving, like you literally can't even do that anymore. And then your options are either people don't have as good of experience because you're not onboarding or maintaining their experience very well because you have too many clients, or you hire somebody to help with that stuff. And then you feel like, okay, I know that this person's taking care of it. So I can like relax and not be like stressed all the time thinking that my clients are having, a bad experience working with me.
Absolutely. And then you don't want to, you don't want to burden yourself with stressing about that. Did I drop the ball with this client or did I forget to send somebody their welcome gift when they joined, right? Like you don't want to overwhelm yourself with that. So it's a really good time to bring someone else in, hire someone else so you can start to delegate some of that workload.
Mm-hmm. And like I said before, I really think it makes a huge difference in how you're showing up, selling yourself. Like if you're a personal brand and you're the one that's doing the marketing, I think you're going to show up with a much different energy if you're excited about new people coming into your business versus if you're like, oh my God, I have so many clients, I can't even deal with the ones that I have. Like that kind of experience is, I'm confident is going to show up in the way that you actually interact with potential customers because you're going to be like, oh no, if I get another client, I'm going to like, my whole system's going to break.
Yes. And some people I notice they actually get afraid to market. Like they don't want to market. They don't want to send people to their website because just like you said, one more client might bust the entire bottle and you don't want to do that. So it's really important to just gauge when you're at a place of capacity and you can't handle any more physically. And then that's time for you to go out and start thinking about hiring someone.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So I know that a lot of people, I'm sure if you are running a business or, you even have a job that that you need some help and you're looking to get help around what you're doing in your career, I think a big fear that a lot of people have is the whole like training and delegating piece. So, and this is something I've had to work through is this idea that like, if somebody can do it 70% as well as I can give it to them, because I'm always like, they need to do 100 or more. Like it has to be that they're doing it better than me. So that was a big learning curve for me. But what would you say for people who they want to hire, they see the need to hire, but they're worried that when they do hire someone, it's going to be impossible for them to actually get the work done that they need done in an effective way?
So I think that starts with the interview process. It's two ways to approach it. I'll talk about how you can do the training part because I know that's a worry as well. But for me, making sure the person can do the job, that starts during the hiring process. So my team, we do two things. We always have our candidates take like a personality test, and then we have them take a skills test. And so basically with the personality, I just want to see, are you a visual learner? What's your personality type? Are you outgoing? Are you introverted? We do that so we can actually get to know the person and see how they would work in unison with me and with the other people that are on my team. And then the skill test is basically giving them a really small task or a really small test and seeing how they perform on it, because that's very telling in regards to how they're going to handle the rest of the work that you delegate to them. So your skills test could be just giving them a small piece of what you do on a day-to-day basis, having them like respond to a certain email, or give them a messy like Trello board and then have them organize the Trello board and see how they do it. That's going to be very telling to the type of work and the quality of work that they're going to give you once they're hired. And so that's how I would approach it, just to see what type of work they do, right? And then on the back end of it is training. Now, once you get a person in the door who has the skills you're looking for, their personality is a really good fit for working with you and your team, right? Once they're in the door for that and you feel like they will be a good fit, then you can, on the back end part of your training, you can make this really easy on yourself. And when you do your work on your laptop, just open up your laptop, open up like Zoom or Loom, just to give you guys a couple of the tools, and record what you're doing on your screen while you're doing it. So I'll use an example. When you said you had to schedule calls in your Facebook group, right, for your clients, open up your computer as you're doing it and open up a screen recorder and just say, okay, I'm going to schedule the call in my Facebook group today. This is exactly how I do it. That way, you're not doing any extra work for training. You're literally just recording the action that you were going to do anyway. Then you can give that video over to your new hire and they can start taking over tasks for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use Loom for ours. And I even do it because my assistant right now she's in person like part of the week. So if she's here, I'll have her just watch over my shoulder as I'm doing it. But then I'll also record it at the same time so then I can send that recording to her, not only so that she could like look at it later if she's forgetting something or not sure about something, but then also, as I'm sure you teach as well, she's able to actually do a written process from that video. Is that what you have your, I guess, team and your students do?
Yes. Yep, very much so. Just create the SOP right from that. And it's so easy now with Loom because they give you the automatic transcriptions. And so you're literally, oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, so no, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Loom, when you record what you're doing on the computer with Loom will give you the automatic transcriptions now. And so you can just pull the transcription right out of Loom and boom, you have your SOP. Now you have that in the company, and anybody else that comes in, they can just go through that with the video, and that's the training.
Wow. I guess I'm learning something new here that I need to look at Loom and see what this transcription thing is, because I think what I would always have them do is just watch the video and then type out all the steps, which I think you probably still have to do a little bit, or you have to take screen grabs or something so that they can see what button are you pressing, that kind of thing. But I will say once you have those in your business, it makes hiring a lot easier. Or even like I was talking to my assistant today that at some point we may hire somebody to take over some of the tasks she's doing as her assistant. And then so if she has those standard operating procedures or SOPs, she can literally just like give the SOP to her assistant and train that person to do it. So definitely it takes extra time. And as someone who really resisted doing this for a while, I get like, you're like, oh, it's just so much work to like do all this stuff. But as I'm hoping you guys will understand after our conversation today, it does make such a big impact in the long term. And you're really creating a much more sustainable, healthy business than if you were just doing everything yourself all the time.
And then think about it. What happens if you get sick and you have to take, you have to take a week off, or you want to take, or something happy, or you want to take a vacation and you want to go away for the summertime? Who's going to run all of these
Who does
things?
vacations? Nobody does those anymore.
Right. I know, but I'm just me, what if you want time off? Well, how are you going, how are you going to do it? You know what I mean? How are you going to do it if you're always the one doing all of the things? So although this is not fun, there's no momentum in it. It's not exciting. It is when you can walk away from the business and it's still running.
Oh,
You
definitely.
always there.
Yeah. Well, and I know for us, one of the things we're trying to do this year is get to a place that if my husband and I want to have kids, that the business can still operate. And I'm still at that place where even taking a week off is like a lot for me. So if we have children, we're going to need more than a week off for like the postpartum period and everything like that. And when I'm pregnant, I don't, as I'm sure a lot of people listening know, since we talk about hormones and fertility all the time, sometimes being pregnant, like there's a lot of fatigue or nausea and that kind of thing. And I know for me, I do not want to have the work schedule that I have right now if I'm pregnant. So, and then with the postpartum period, it's like being able to have at least 6 weeks of knowing that the business is like okay without me. That's really what we're trying to accomplish. And it's amazing. Just, you don't really think about it when you're starting your own business, that like what would happen if I couldn't work for a few weeks, but it's something that usually a lot of times you'll realize like the business is really dependent on you being in it if you're not setting up these systems. And that's not a very like low stress place to be.
No, and it's not sustainable long-term either. So I agree with you. You definitely have to just set things up now. You're going to thank yourself later.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, one of the first people I hired was a housekeeper. So I'd be curious to hear, because I think sometimes we're always talking about like, oh, get a virtual assistant or somebody. I mean, if you do hire for social media, obviously somebody can do that. And somebody could be like an operations manager, that kind of thing. So we're always thinking about like the business, hiring for the business stuff. What about hiring for your personal life? Like, is there a different way to do that? Or is that something like a mindset shift that needs to happen that's different than hiring for the business?
Absolutely. I think with hiring for your personal life, the mindset shift is just, it's not much different from doing it for the business. Like for me, with hiring a housekeeper, I had a nanny at one point. We had someone to help with because my children homeschool. Well, my oldest homeschools, and when the youngest, he's almost 2, when he gets of age, we're going to homeschool him as well. So with bringing in people to do these different things for us at home, I think a lot of people have to make the shift that, oh, only rich people have that. Like that's something I hear very commonly. It's a very common thought. Oh, I don't need to have a housekeeper, or I don't need to have someone who can come into my home and do what I can do for myself. But it's very much similar to the business. One, how is this affecting your health to run everything in your house and have to go to work and have to take care of all of the things that are on your plate? Wouldn't it be wise to give someone else the task or the responsibility so that you can have some more of that free time, some more of that self-care time that you need, and some of that downtime that all of us need. And yet things are still being taken care of in your home. So it's a very similar mindset when it comes to hiring for your personal life as it is when you're hiring for your business. It's just, why are you doing this? If you're going to hire someone to help you, why? What's it for? And I think once you make that connection and once you make that shift, it becomes an exciting process.
Mm-hmm. I've had that same experience before where it felt like, and I don't know if it's like a self-judgment or literally like people are like, oh, that's like really bougie that you have a housekeeper coming every week. And I'm like, listen, like you said, it's very, very difficult to run a full-time business and also manage your house. And if you're going to drop certain things off your plate to make space for really doing the high-level work, why not drop housekeeping, right? Like, we don't get any special gold star for being the one that does the dishes or does the laundry, that kind of thing.
No.
And I feel like the funny thing is I feel like this is a woman thing to be weird about hiring help in the house like that. Like, I don't know if I know any men that were like, oh, I can't hire a housekeeper. Like, I feel like men are just like, cool, like, I don't want to do this stuff anyway. So it's just interesting. It seems like women have this, like, it's their own double standard. I don't think it's men creating this for them. I think it's women kind of creating this for themselves, that somehow they're a bad wife or a bad mom if they're not doing it themselves. And it's total nonsense. I don't know if you want to speak to that since you're a mom. I'm not a mom, but I'm a wife. And sometimes, like, I know my mom thinks it's weird that I don't do laundry, but I'm like, why should I be doing laundry? That's like the least high value task I could be doing during the week.
You know what I think it is, Laura? I think it's that we have this like standard, I guess you could say. Maybe it's an old standard, but what we think a perfect wife and a perfect mom is, right? You cook and you clean and you take care of the house and all of that. And it's just a different time. Like, women are running businesses and companies and working now. It's not the same as it was when those standards were put in place. And so that's the way I see it. I don't see myself as less of a wife or less of a mom because I don't do laundry, like you said, right? Or I'm not doing the dishes. I'm still there in my home and making sure that, my job is being taken care of on a daily basis. So I feel as long as the thing is being completed, the task is being done, and I'm doing my absolute best to make sure things are still running in a proper order, I feel like I'm doing my job. So I really believe it might be rooted in just old principles, old standards that we have for ourselves as women, but they're being recreated now.
Well, and it's funny because there is a part of the Bible, it's actually the Old Testament, it's Proverbs 31 that talks about, and it's always one of these like, oh, it's the ideal woman, which I hate that concept in general, but they kind of talk about like what, how an ideal woman like, operates. But it's funny because so much of it is like talking about how she's got servants that help her and that she's like out in the marketplace and that kind of thing. And I'm just like,
she bought real estate.
Right, exactly. She's like running a business. She's, like you said, buying real estate. Like, she's out in the town and she's got servants taking care of stuff at home. And it's like, I don't know why there's this belief that a good wife is someone who like does all the dishes and does all the cooking and everything like that. And I get the whole like division of labor thing. If the husband is the one working, then obviously it makes sense for the wife to be doing stuff at home because somebody needs to be doing it, right? Like you said, it has to get done. But I just feel like there's this gender divide that it doesn't really exist because we're making it for ourselves. Like we're just like creating this thing that isn't real. But I know I've even gotten some weird pushback about, like I asked my husband when we're in a really busy season of our business, just to like make sure he's the one cooking for the next few weeks. I'm like, and I acknowledge it. I say, listen, you don't have to be cooking all the time, but we're in a really busy season right now. And I really need you to be the one doing dinner for the next few weeks. And he's totally cool with it. So it's like one of these things where I know not all men would necessarily be as happy about that as my husband would be, but I just think we need to, as women, be able to let go of this expectation that, well, I'm the woman, so that means I have to do not only run a company, but then also do all the house stuff at home.
Yes, like we have to give ourselves more grace. That's how I feel about it. It's just giving yourself more love and more grace and more ease. I mean, you're doing something that's really hard, building a business or just running a household. Period. It's not easy. It's not something that there's no book that, there's no like perfect standard book that tells you how to do it, right? Like you're kind of figuring it out as you go. So I definitely believe that we need to just be a little easier on ourselves as we're figuring out how to do this.
Yeah. And the other way I look at it is, especially if you're paying people well, you're giving people a job that they need to work, right? Like, especially like I know my housekeeper, I'm pretty sure she's single and doesn't have kids and she needs to work to support herself. And so the fact that she can come in and do a job I think it's pretty, we don't have like huge messes in the house and it's a comfortable job. I pay her well. She seems pretty happy with it. Like it's consistent for her. She comes every week. So there's value to that, to people who, if I didn't let that go, then she would maybe be having to do a job that she didn't like or wasn't paying as well or was more, unhealthy for her to be in. So it is something that I really feel like people should look at hiring as being an opportunity to also help other people. Because again, if we're not ever letting go of anything, there's a lot of people out there that would love to do that work that won't have the opportunity because we're being selfish, trying to hold on to it all ourselves.
Trying to do it all and gaining nothing from it, really. overwhelming yourself, overwork. You're not gaining anything from doing all of the things, right? So I agree with you 100%. Create those jobs, give those opportunities, and give yourself more free time.
Everybody wins in that situation. So cool. Well, I would love to hear a little bit about how you help people with this whole process, because I know that you, as an operations coach, help other people do this. So what's your approach to helping your clients?
We go through, I really work with people who have never hired before, or they're right in the beginning stages. They may have hired like one or two contractors before, but for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. So what we do is we actually have a program where we work with entrepreneurs or brand new, I guess you could say brand new, we call them like rich CEOs. So they're brand new to just becoming rich in time again. And in our program, we spend about a year together where we go through restructuring their processes behind their business. And as you're rebuilding those processes, we help you simultaneously build a team to help you maintain those processes. And so over the year of us working together, I basically teach you my 4-step formula for using a no fear way of hiring so that you can build a team that frees up your time, allows you to build a multiple 6-figure company or 7-figure company, whatever your goal is, that's sustainable and that really sets you free because you're doing it without the stress.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like a 30,000 foot view of those 4 steps that you take people through?
Yeah. So it's releasing the control, igniting your team, cultivating your workflows and your systems, and then you hype it all up by doing a big launch at the end with your team. And the way that you know this whole thing is running and working for you is we make you take off a week from the business to test it and see if it's all running at the end.
I love it.
Yeah.
You're like, vacation is mandatory.
Yes, it's mandatory homework.
Mm-hmm. And so you normally work with people that don't have any team at all, and they're just really at that like solopreneur level that they need to put all of that stuff into place?
We have 3 different people that come to 3 different types of clients. So that's the first one. Yes. People who have no team, they've never done this before. They're brand new. Or number 2 is people who have, like I said, worked with a few contractors before, but it can't grow legs for them. They don't have it running yet. And then the third type is people who have a team and they have the structures in place. However, they know they need to grow it to a new level because they're moving into either like a new model in their business or a new level of revenue. And so we help them like refine, reprocess, and then get it to the goal of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, because I feel like, I know for me, just already having some people in place, it's almost, we're at the place where my assistant kind of was in everything, if that makes sense. Like all the little parts of the business, like if I could give it to her, I was just like, you just take this off my plate because I can't. So now what we're doing is kind of restructuring stuff. And we were, again, like right before we got on this call, just looking at where would it make most sense for her to kind of live in the company structure, and then who's our next hire that we want to do. And so I feel like just being able to, because sometimes it's really just like putting out fires with your first person, like just, okay, please just like take some stuff off my plate so you can even think about it. Because if you're so busy that you can't even stop to look at the big picture, it's like, how are you going to hire like a more effective team? So even just getting some of those basic tasks off your plate so you can have a little bit of breathing room. And again, sometimes that's hiring someone from like a personal need. So a personal assistant or like a housekeeper or something. Because if you get, like, I don't know how much time people spend cleaning their house, but what if it's like a couple hours a week that you can get back to just like breathe for a second and look at your business? So I feel like those kind of people, a lot of times it's kind of just like get some stuff off your plate to make space. But then once you get to the place where things are okay, you know, this person is getting things done and I don't need to babysit them and all of that, then you can kind of zoom out and say, okay, what is the structure of the company going to be? And who's the next hire? Or how do I need to like reformat things so that there's more organization to this business?
Yeah, and that's where we come in. So we would definitely, from that point, while you have that breathing room, I help you zoom out. And then we go, okay, what's the organizational chart look like? Not based on where you are right now and what fires you need to put out, but where you want to be in a year, in 3 years. Let's build the whole thing out and then make a hiring plan from that and then build out those positions piece by piece by piece. So that's kind of where we come in the door, and then we help you not just fill those positions and bring those people on the team, but also how do we create the processes and the workflows and make sure this thing is running like a well-oiled machine, and then let's test it at the end. Mm-hmm. And you take off.
Yeah. Take that break, take that vacation. Now, do you guys do like a specific, like I know, for example, in the mastermind I'm in James Wedmore's performance mastermind, mm-hmm. we are getting taught what is it called? Traction method. So the visionary integrator, like organizational chart. Do you guys do that, or do you do something different?
Yeah, I have like my own version of it that's worked for me, because I saw the traction method. It didn't work for what I was trying to build. So I basically created my own version of it.
Is there, like, if you were going to say one thing that you do differently than the traction method, now I'm asking you like for personal, I'm like, I'm really interested in this. I want to know what you do. So is there anything like in a nutshell you could say is different than the way traction teaches?
Because I make you work backwards from what your revenue is right now. So like I said, most people will come in and they'll hire from, like you said, just putting out those fires in the beginning, or you just hire for like those smaller tasks in the beginning. I make you basically build a team to take over your revenue streams right now, because that's the main thing that is keeping all of your focus. That's why you can't zoom out. So get this small team, whether it's 1 or 2 people, have them running what's bringing in your revenue and how you are maintaining that program or those programs. Then you can come over to this CEO side, and then let's build out how the rest of your company needs to look. So I kind of make you reverse roll it, like do it backwards.
So I'm curious, when you say do it backwards, because I know, for example, James teaches to hire, he calls it like the mailroom strategy, where you start with people that are at like a lower level and then kind of work them up to a higher position in your team. Do you do it opposite of that? And I know I could probably have like a whole different like hour-long conversation about this, but I'm just curious.
I kind of make you put in, instead of you building from the bottom up, bringing people in and then continuously promoting them, I make you put pillar people in the bottom first. So that's how we do it. Like, it's like pillar people in the bottom, and then you can see, the biggest key is seeing what all the rest of your roles need to be, so that this can be what you wanted to grow into over the next 1 to 3 years. And then once you get your pillar people in the position they need to be in, from there, we say, do we need to bring in outside management? Do we need to bring in people who have a certain skill set already? Or is it wise for you to bump up these people that you have already and continue to promote them? So I don't automatically go into it with the mindset of promoting people from the bottom. It's like, who is your pillar team? Then we decide if we're going to promote or if we're going to pull in higher management.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, because I know sometimes like when you hire somebody who is trained, you can end up spending like a lot more money with their hourly rate, which I mean makes sense. They already are ready to go, and they've done a lot of work to get there, versus the strategy of hiring from a lower position and letting them work their way up. You can kind of let them grow with the company. So I feel like it's interesting, because I'm just thinking through the way that we're doing it. I feel like maybe I'm doing it similar to the way that you teach. I'd be really curious to like talk to you about my about my direction that I'm going in my business. But it's just interesting because it's like, again, the first hire was just, I need to get some stuff off my plate. And then now that she's been doing that for a while, we're like, all right, let's put you, like, she's going to be the head of fulfillment. And then maybe, fingers crossed, my husband might come in as the operations manager and help with operations. And then I have a couple of question marks next to my growth side of the organizational chart, because I'm like, all right, I don't really have anyone at the head of that. And that would probably be, if I was going to hire someone, the next like big area that I need help with. But I feel like,
let's have a talk. Let's have a call.
Yeah, because I'm like, it's so interesting, because even just because I work with so many different types of entrepreneurs and people at different levels, people that are brand new, people that are, they're making multi-six figures and they're getting to a place where they're burnt out. And it's just interesting to see the different needs that people have. And sometimes I think the challenge is when you get a solopreneur who has done it all themselves and gotten to a multi-six-figure business, and then it's like they've embedded themselves into so much of the business that they don't even know how to extract themselves. And that's where I feel like having someone like you come in can really help actually like put the pause button on and be like, all right, let's look at this and let's strategically pull you out of the different places that you don't need to be in.
Yeah, because all of it's in your head, right? Like the business is basically running in your head. So what's the process?
It's exhausting.
What's the process? Right, exactly. But it's like, what's that look like to pull it out of you basically and get it on paper so somebody else can understand it and then remove you from the process. That's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I think I'm going to have a separate conversation with you about my business because I feel like part of me thinks I'm doing it the right way, but the other part of me is like, maybe I'm not, and it would help to get some more professional eyes on that. Now, like I said, I feel like we could probably go into a whole nother hour about hiring and systems development, but just in the interest of time, I would love to hear, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people listening that would love to connect with you. What would be the next best step for someone who wants to learn more about the work that your company does and how they might be able to get your help in solving these hiring and team building problems?
Absolutely. I have a training that I did in regards to how to build your business to the next multi-six-figure level in 4 days per week. So what you can do to watch that training, you have to apply to watch it. But once you apply and, we're sure that we can actually help you based on where you are in your business right now, then you will gain access to it. So all you have to do is go to cenamartinchandler.com/apply. And from there, you'll be able to read how we're able to help you step by step, what our process is, and then you can go ahead and request to see that training.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And we'll put the link to that in the show notes if you all want to check that out. It's an interesting strategy that you do the application to get the training, because I feel like usually with free stuff, it's just like, oh, anybody can get it and it's just available to everybody. But that's an interesting approach to kind of make sure that the person's actually someone that would benefit from the content.
Yeah, we actually learned that from, we have a few business coaches, and that was something that we started implementing the end of last year. And it's been really, really great because although a lot of people want to hire, everybody's not at the position where we could best help them. So that's why we do it that way.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Cena, it was so great to meet you and get to chat with you about all this operation stuff. I am kind of cracking up that literally this was like what I was talking about moments before we jumped on this. Is there any last minute words of wisdom that you want to share with the audience?
Absolutely. So just think about where you want to be 6 months from now. I know hiring can cause procrastination. You might be afraid. You might have all of these limiting thoughts that's stopping you from doing it. But just think, do you want to be in this exact same position, doing things the exact same way 6 months from now? Or would you like to see progress that requires less of your time? So depending on what your answer is, just go for it. Figure out what you need to do, apply for that training, and take the next step and hire someone.
Awesome. Well, I know what my answer to that question is, so you don't have to tell me twice. Well, anyway, Cena, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise and your time with us. And hopefully there's some listeners out there that are going to go take the next step with you to learn about how your company can help them make their company run more smoothly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
Awesome. Well, thanks for spending the last 45 minutes to an hour with us, everybody, and we'll see you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey there, Laura here again. Thank you so much for listening to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Your time is your most precious resource, and I'm so grateful that you choose to spend some of it with me. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast and want to continue supporting my work on this show, I would very much appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes. By leaving a 5-star review, you'll help others find the show and help me spread my message to a larger audience. You can go to fedandfearless.com/review to find a button that'll take you right to iTunes to leave your review. And I have a special gift for you as a thank you for helping me share the podcast. Once you leave your review, send a screenshot of the review to hello@lauraschoenfeldrd.com. Or you can DM it to me on Instagram @lauraschoenfeldrd. Once you do, I'll share a free copy of my Overcoming Undereating ebook. Then share a favorite podcast episode in your Instagram stories and tag me @lauraschoenfeldrd. And I'll also give you a free copy of my 14-day calorie challenge recipe guide. Together, these bonuses are worth $44 and will help you become Fed and Fearless. And you'll get them absolutely free for just helping me grow the podcast. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you here next week for the latest episode.